Good morning, everybody. I'm really honored to be here with not only friends, but two of my favorite creators on the internet. I think the first question, considering this talk, being the future of the creator economy, is what do you both believe the future of the creator economy actually looks like?
Am I going first?
You should.
Okay. Well, I think first of all, we are living in a time, and we're going to continue living in a time, and this is really going to accelerate, where everybody, whether you want to or not, or whether you consider yourself a creator or not, everybody now has a personal brand. If you are on the internet, if you're using social media, any platform, and you're putting your thoughts, ideas out there, you're chatting with friends, I think to some degree now, for the first time in history, we all have a personal brand. People have always had a reputation of sorts, but now it's a digital footprint. People are online, they have their avatar, people know their names. Even people who are anonymous, they still have a personal brand of sorts. And I think the world is just going to continue moving in that direction.
Sure.
We have several billion more people who are going to be coming onto the internet and onto social media from developing countries over the next decade or two. And so it's all going to continue to grow in that direction. So I think your individual reputation and what you're known for, I don't really like the term personal brand, but it's what it is, and I think we all have one. And I think for entrepreneurs, for creators, for everyday normal people, right? Everyone, even if you're someone who is employed in a quote-unquote normal career, that digital footprint that you have is going to become more and more important and valuable, and I think it's important for people to recognize that.
Beautiful.
I think the future of the creator economy is decentralized. And I know we're going to get into this, but there's so much censorship that we see online. And Zuby, I know you also feel this as well. We're almost terrified of the things that we can and can't say, because our content is going to be taken down. And because, of course, we all have these personal brands, it becomes your vehicle, it's your way of making money, it's your way of making a living, it becomes like who you are, essentially. And when that gets taken away from you, it's extremely dangerous. To be cancelled is very dangerous, it's very difficult, and it's just something that you don't want. It causes a lot of hassle in your life. And so the future of the creator economy, I would say, is completely decentralized. And I also agree in terms of building a personal brand. I think even when we see media businesses and, well, every kind of business that we see is going to become a media business, just because it's all about putting content out there. It's all about putting a face to a brand. And so everyone is going to be creating video content more now than ever before.
And with these platforms that you're currently creating on, even though one of them has now been bought by Elon Musk, obviously, what do you feel is the current state of these platforms? What do you feel is the current state of censorship, per se, or even free speech on these locations? Because I believe, both of your content, I think, derives in sovereignty. You're truly talking about how to be a sovereign individual and a sovereign being. What is the current state of free speech on these social media sites?
Well, it's not great. I think it's gotten better with the purchase of Twitter by Elon. At least you have someone who is pro-free speech running these things. I've been on Twitter for 14 years. I've been on a lot of these platforms for well over a decade at this point, and you've seen the noose tightening over the course of time. It used to be a little bit more like the Wild West, and people didn't worry about getting banned or censored or deplatformed or anything like that. And I think a lot of the people who run these platforms, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, I think they got in over their heads. I think these things grew much bigger and became far more prominent and influential than perhaps people like Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey or whoever started YouTube, far more than they ever thought, influencing elections. You have to remember, these are global platforms as well. So most of these are American-based companies, but they work across 100+ different countries. And different countries have different rules, different laws, different ideas around free speech. And I think we also need to remember that it's all very new. So I think oftentimes people think the solution in terms of the moderation for these platforms is very simple, but I think actually it's more complicated than people realize. However, with that said, I think one of the big problems with them, that regardless of where people sit politically, socially, culturally, whatever your viewpoint, one of the biggest issues is, in terms of the moderation, has been, number one, lack of transparency. What Layah was talking about, I think one of the concerns is you could just say something that you don't even think, it doesn't violate anything, but they still give you a strike on your YouTube channel, or they take your video down, or they temporarily suspend you on the platform. I mean, of all the 140,000 tweets I've put out there, the one I got banned for was "okay, dude." Right? Those two words, "okay, dude." Of all the things I've said, that's the one that they were like, "Nope, Zuby's crossed the line. We need to, give him a timeout." And so having that sort of Damocles sort of proverbially hanging over you, it's concerning because it restricts you. It also limits information. If you look at the last few years that we've lived through, the amount of censorship that was going on, the deplatforming, not allowing any type of dissent or conversation, it has real ramifications on society. So it's not just limited to social media, it goes beyond that.
As Zuby said, it's in a terrible place. I've had a lot of content taken down. I, for example, had an interview with Robert Kiyosaki taken down from YouTube because they didn't like what he said about vaccines and elections. When I talk about central bank digital currencies on TikTok, that gets taken down. I think I called Justin Trudeau a feminist on TikTok, and that got taken down. So you really just, you can't say anything on the internet right now, and it's truly unbelievable. And of course, it causes all sorts of concerns when it comes to misinformation, because the only way to find out the truth is to have more and more dialogue. And I know everybody's extremely excited about Elon Musk now that he's, taken over Twitter, but I'm not that excited about it. It still concerns me because it's still, our right to free speech and access to free information is still in the hands of an individual. It's in a centralized entity, which is a concern for me. And of course, we saw the new CEO. She's from the World Economic Forum, which creates more concerns for all of us. And I do believe everybody, unfortunately, has a price. I do believe that everybody is eventually corruptible. You don't know what somebody may have on somebody else, which then, means that they have to do other things or censor people or whatever it is. And so long term, I am extremely concerned about the future of content creation. There's so much that I can't say. TikTok is horrendous. Twitter, still not very happy about it. People are still getting taken down on Twitter, by the way. I had a friend, he uploaded some content about animal hunting. Now, whether you're pro animal hunting or not, he got banned from Twitter. This is under Elon Musk. Instagram is terrible. I've been shadow banned on there for a very long time just because I talk about vaccines, I talk about COVID and how tyrannical all of that was. So, it's not great, which is why, when I started this, I said that the future of the creator economy is 110% decentralized.
I agree. And I think this, maybe give her a little round of applause. So this kind of leads us to the conversation around alt tech, which is kind of the term you gave me in our conversation, alternative technologies. And I would bucket them into two different things. I would look at alt tech that is centralized, so we'll go with like the Minds, the Locals, the Rumbles of the world. And then we have the potential of decentralized, so Nostradamus, Zion. We look at these other technologies. What do you think the state is of these alternative and tech platforms? And as a creator, how do you think about building on them and building audiences on them?
Well, it's new, and new is exciting. I think something that is an upside of all the censorship that's been going on over the last few years and this tightening noose on these other mainstream platforms is they are creating openings for competition. If people did not have these concerns about the centralization and about the censorship and everything like that, then the impetus to create, let alone use, these alternative platforms, there just wouldn't be a great incentive for it.
They're creating a market.
Exactly.
They're creating a market for conversation.
Yeah, they're creating a market, and ultimately, as a capitalist, I think that competition is good. I think it'll keep the mainstream ones more on their toes, and they'll realize, okay, perhaps we cannot be as censorious and biased as we've been in the past, because there were no alternatives before. It was like, okay, if you got kicked off YouTube, where do you go?
Sure.
And then what happens? Rumble pops up, and Rumble is doing very well, and they're actually gaining a lot of major creators, and they're saying, hey, look, we won't ban you. So actually, the more censorious something like YouTube becomes, the greater an opening they're creating for Rumble and any other challengers. I think the same is happening with Twitter. right? We saw what happened with, there was Parler, there was Getter, then now there's Truth Social, Minds.com. There's all these different ones, and sure, none of them have been able to, take the crown from Twitter in the short term. But again, I think we have to think long term. We've only had the combination of smartphones and social media for, 15 years? It's extremely new. It's really new. I think we feel like we've had these things forever, but it's still new. And it's hard to predict where we're going to be 10 or 15 years from now, but I think absolutely it's going to be way more decentralized. I think what you're doing with Zion, allowing people to own their digital identity and actually take their audience with them wherever they go, because it acts as a protocol rather than a centralized platform. I think that type of technology, whether it stands on its alone or it gets integrated into some of these legacy social media platforms or perhaps some type of combination, I think that's ultimately where it's going to go, because I do think that at a deep core level, it's not always obvious, but I do think that people do crave freedom, people do crave liberty, people do want to be able to speak their mind and listen to other people who are speaking their mind. So I think, as concerning and sometimes scary as it all can be, I think in the long term, I'm very optimistic with that. I think the competition is going to make sure that the best thing stands. Just like the way Bitcoin, you've got all these other competitors, you've got how many different currencies of all sorts out there in the world, but I think that the one that is best and the one that is strongest is going to stand long term.
I think, as with anything, like we see in the Bitcoin space and even across the board when it comes to cryptocurrency, the biggest issue with mass adoption is the user experience. People often have issues taking self-custody. They leave their assets on exchanges, then those assets go down, and then they lose their money, and we're back at square one again. And so I think the same is true for social media platforms. I think the biggest issue to adopting decentralized social media platforms is the user experience, unfortunately. I don't want to pinpoint specific apps, but a lot of decentralized applications right now, people aren't moving to them. That you're just not flocking to them because people just don't understand how to use it. I find it difficult, and if I find it difficult, then somebody who's not in the crypto space, somebody who doesn't hold any Bitcoin, they're going to find it almost impossible. And so I think that the user experience desperately needs to be improved very quickly in order to ensure, more people feel comfortable coming on board. That being said, I also think that the mass adoption of Bitcoin will only happen when people feel that there's no other option. So a lot of people, for example, during 2021, when they saw what happened during the world, what was going on with lockdowns and so on, a lot of people just flocked to Bitcoin because there was really no other option. And so I think the same is going to be true again for social media apps. When people just get censored, people, they lose their livelihood because their business is essentially shut down by these corporations. They will have to learn. They will have to learn how to use these decentralized applications. And so I think adoption comes out of desperation. That's how I see the future going.
Now, one of the inherent things that I wondered about these other social networks, particularly the alt ones, was why not have native wallets? Why not have the ability to earn? I think some of these alternative social networks are still working with these constructs of advertising. I think the Twitter thing, I think it's a bit of a, I think the WEF thing is really interesting, of people saying she's a WEF person. The truth is she ran advertising for NBC, and Twitter is an ad business, and they're burning money like crazy, and they need more advertisers, so it's bring the queen of advertising to run the business. That to me is really the play. But why do you think that all these businesses continue to be ad businesses and can't move away from the direct support platform for creators?
I think honestly it's because it's what people know. Most of these companies are run, people who have been in business for decades, and for the past century at least, the advertising model has been the way you monetize things. Whether you're running a TV channel, it's the way Google, Facebook, YouTube, all of these platforms, whether online or offline, advertising is just, it's the go-to. It's tried, it's tested. You're always going to be having people out there who want to get their products out and their services out in front of other people. So I think it's seen as a sort of a low-risk, safe option. And I think that once someone has been in business for many decades or running these type of platforms for many decades, they have a vested interest. Of course, they have other entities. They have the advertisers and partners and their shareholders and all these other entities.
The business model is entrenched.
Yes, and so are the relationships. So is this network. So for them to go out on a limb and take a completely different risk and try a new way of monetization that might annoy some of their shareholders, especially if they're a public company, it's a lot to ask for. But again, I think this creates the opportunity for young and quick-moving entrepreneurs and investors and business owners to create something, to try new stuff.
Right.
To try new stuff. If you're a giant corporation worth billions of dollars, it's hard to take certain types of risks. I think this is also why they're supporting a lot of these woke agendas and whatnot, right? Not because they really believe in it, but it's safe. It's safe. It's easier to not, step on any toes or annoy anybody. But for people like us, we can go out and cause trouble because we're harder to cancel. So I think that, it creates that opportunity with what you're doing with Zion and Nostr, whatever else is out there already and is going to come. They can move a lot more quickly. They can test things out, try them. And again, we're going to find out what that new model is in the long term. I don't think it's clear at this stage what exactly comes after advertising, right? If you're going to have this type of platform with no advertising, what exactly is the revenue model? Where exactly is the money coming from? I don't think that answer is clear yet, but it will be.
Yeah, I definitely think the business model is entrenched, and it's very difficult to change and try something new, especially when, if it's working, why change it, I guess, to some extent. But I also think that people don't really want to pay, Like, you can be scrolling through Twitter and you might see something which entertains you, but doesn't mean you want to pay for it. You want to see the drama, you want to see what's going on, but you don't necessarily want to give your money away. People just don't, and I understand, people are paying $8 a month for Twitter, but that's because you're giving it to a company, so you feel better about yourself rather than endorsing somebody who you don't really like, but you like to see the drama and the entertainment online. I think it's as simple as that. People just don't really want to give their money away to people that they're not completely invested in. I think in order to give an individual money, you need to be some kind of super fan, right? And you're not a super fan for everyone. There's only probably a couple people that you absolutely love and you want to give the money, and that's it. So I think people want to participate, but they don't want to pay.
Do you think there's a future in microtransactions for these social networks? It seems like, look, we have a $4 billion a year business called OnlyFans, right? And they're doing $800 million in free cash flow, effectively on microtransactions and small subscriptions. You can say that it's an adult business, but it's a direct support platform, nonetheless making a lot of cash. So is there a future for microtransactions for creators?
Well, just on the point of OnlyFans, you have to understand what it is.
Totally.
Predominantly, it's men looking at young women in a provocative manner, right?
App. I get it.
No. But what I'm saying is, like, they are super fans. They are addicted. They are super fans. Their entire biology is pushing them to look in a certain way. It's not the same.
Yes. For that market, right. Yes. So there is, but what about for other types of creators? Is there an opportunity for microtransactions?
Well, I mean, absolutely. I think it's a natural evolution of a decentralized platform.
Right.
And it would be great to tip if you like something. Sure, tip a few Satoshis. I don't know how well that's going to do, because maybe I'm cynical, but I really stand by the idea that, like, people just don't want to give money unless you're a super fan, which is a man watching a young woman on OnlyFans. So that's a super fan.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. It's a category for sure. And I just wonder if that type of content eventually transcends. Zuby, what's your perspective on microtransactions?
Well, firstly, I think that male thirst drives a lot of innovation.
Yeah.
And it has done all through human history.
It built video, it built VHS, it built...
So, it might start with prawn and only simps. But over time, I think things have to be normalized sometimes as well. So I think, yes, at the moment, because social media has been quote unquote free, it's not really free, right? We're the products that they're selling to advertisers. But I think that for the past 15 years, people have gotten used to this idea of all these platforms being free, right? It's just free, and that's the way people think. And to try to change human behavior for individuals or at scale, it's always difficult. So I think that there could be a future where people are just totally used to microtransactions. I mean, you see little pockets of this. You brought up like the OnlyFans model, but even if you look at something like YouTube communities or Twitch communities with super chats and the donations, like in the streaming world,
it works.
It's streaming world. It's very normal, and everyone understands. Yeah, if you like a creator, you just throw them $5. You want to ask a question, cool, send them a $20 super chat,
right?
And it works. Not everyone is going to do it, but enough people, and to someone who's outside of it, it might be weird. They're looking at that like, why did you just give $100 to this person playing video games, like to support them, But to people who are in that economy, it's very normal to them.
Yeah.
And I can see that becoming a little bit more widespread, especially if it's microtransactions. We're not just talking, giving $5, $10, $100, $500, but, a couple Satoshis here, some Satoshis there. So again, like everything I keep saying, I think it takes time.
I think as well, when you are within that creator economy, different platforms often have different tokens. So I guess to some extent, you don't feel like you're giving money when you're giving away like a token, which creators can then cash out. TikTok is a great example of this. On TikTok, you can buy different tokens and fun emojis and whatever it is, and then you can just send it to a creator. And so you have like 13-year-olds just like throwing away $100 because they don't really understand what they're doing, because it's just an emoji, I can just throw it away. But then the creator has the ability to cash out. So I guess within certain economies, if the idea of money is sort of separated from what they're giving away, perhaps, that can definitely be a way forward.
So Twitter is, I think, both of your largest platforms. I have a inkling, my spidey senses are tingling that, yes, woo. My spidey senses are tingling in the sense that Elon will build a native digital wallet on Twitter very soon. Obviously, the hope of probably everyone at this conference is that it would be Lightning enabled. They have Lightning tips on certain profiles. He's a super fan of you. He follows you. He's a subscriber of you. Would you recommend to Elon to say, hey, you should probably put Bitcoin Lightning on a native wallet on Twitter?
I'll send him a DM later today.
There we go. I think you guys should clip that and share that out. That would probably be a real good thing to get. But really, I mean, do you think that enabling Lightning, for example, on Twitter would be effective for tweets? Like, I had an instinct 3 years ago when we built Zion, was that why shouldn't every piece of content ever posted, a reply, a post, have the opportunity for a payment? You don't have to do it, but like it enables it.
Yeah,
what do you think about Twitter enabling that feature?
I think it would be a massive step forward. And I think something that I know Elon understands, and I've actually chatted with him about this online, is that recognizing, look, whatever the platform is, people are there because of the people who create the content, right? All the hundreds of millions of people who use Twitter, the billions of people who use YouTube, whatever, without the content creators, I don't really like that term, but it's what it is. True. Without those individuals, which are a small minority, none of this exists. There's no attention. It's all an attention economy, even if you're running off the old advertising model.
Right.
So you do have to, you should incentivize and compensate the people who are driving all the traffic to the platform and who are actually keeping people there. So I know right now they're experimenting with subscriptions, and they're going to try a lot of different ways of doing this. YouTube has the partner program. I think TikTok has something similar. Instagram you can earn through. So yeah, I think it would be a massive step forward for Elon to do that. And if they do it using Bitcoin rather than some Twitter token, that would be beautiful.
There we go. Layah, last words?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think why not try it? I think that creators should be compensated. I don't see the reason why not. I'm just really skeptical as to whether people are really going to pay, but we'll see.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Thank you, Layah. Thank you, Zuby.
Thanks, man.
Welcome back. I'm Pete Rizzo, editor of Bitcoin Magazine. We're here again at the Bitcoin Magazine live desk presented by Marathon. Once again, joined by special guests Mark Moss, Isaiah Jackson, Q, Kahimi. The next panel we're going to see on the main stage, the Indonesian Bitcoin mining campaign. We're going to hear from Ridwan Kamil, governor of West Java, Indonesia. Guys, want to talk about the rise of Bitcoin mining in the global south? What are we seeing, Mark?
Yeah, I think it's an amazing development. And the reason why is because the world has sort of been shaped by the countries that have natural resources and commodities. So if you have gold, if you had oil, you did really well. If you didn't, well, unfortunately, you didn't have much production into the global GDP. And so what we're seeing is sort of a remake-up, a redrawing of these lines globally. And so nations who have no exports, no natural goods, maybe bananas or coconuts, all of a sudden find themselves sitting on lots of natural resources or excess energy in this case. And so now with things like Starlink, so they can access the internet and these abundant, cheap energy sources that they have, now they're able to tap into a new resource, which is Bitcoin mining. And so they can turn this stranded energy, if you will, these resources that are not really able to get to the market, they can now turn that into money, which could really change the makeup of the world, bring abundance back to these nations, and really help bring global poverty up on a level we've never seen before.
Of course, we've seen this in El Salvador, we've seen this in Africa, and most recently Bhutan. Zay, interested in your take on the rise of mining in these nations?
Oh, yeah. So mining, also known as, I would say, the digital treasure hunt, is something that these nations actually can use to increase their value as a country. And even here in the States, smaller states, I should say, can actually have an industry with Bitcoin mining. And unfortunately, we do have some people that are pushing that Bitcoin is bad for the environment or that it's not clean energy or whatever. And I just want to say to that, and I want to look in the camera and say it, please, do not fall for the climate change psyop, and they're using Bitcoin as a scapegoat. That is not what's happening. Do not take your money out and give it to these politicians who are trying to push their own agenda and using Bitcoin as a scapegoat. And I think that Bitcoin does way more good than it does harm at all.
So potentially Bitcoin mining, maybe in Indonesia. We don't know the announcement. Q, what are your thoughts?
I want to talk first to those who actually have fallen for this psyop, who are the bleeding heart environmentalists. We have Shell Gas here as Shell as one of the sponsors at this year's conference, and I want to quickly cite Dan Batten, who wrote a series of articles for Bitcoin Magazine, essentially highlighting, as someone who, Dan Batten was a bleeding heart environmentalist, donated to Greenpeace. He has done the work and done the research to show and find that during the process of mining from natural gas, they are flaring methane gas, and that attributes to 1.7% of all of the methane gas that's going into our greenhouse gases, or whatever the hell these environmentalists say. But some very, very smart Bitcoin miners, smarter than me, smarter than most of us on this panel, have figured out ways to harness that methane gas and use it to power and mine Bitcoiners, and in turn release less methane gas into the environment. And actually, Dan Batten has proven that Bitcoin mining is actually better for the environment than the current systems that we have in place. So to Zay's point, don't believe these narratives that Bitcoin is bad for the environment. In fact, environmentalists and scientists have done the work to show you that Bitcoin mining is good for the environment.
A chance to change minds. Are U.S. politicians taking a look at what's happening in these other countries? Final take, Mark.
They certainly are. I mean, we can see what the U.S. is doing specifically with its sights set on El Salvador. And so they have specifically given warnings to El Salvador, hey, watch it, be careful, don't go against the financial monopoly that we have. And so, unfortunately, someone like Alex Gladstein, who has really highlighted how the financial system really oppresses or represses some of these nations. And so, unfortunately, I hate to think of my own country like that, but yes, the United States is looking at this, and I don't think they're super happy about this redrawing of the lines.
Well, stay with us. We'll be here at Bitcoin Magazine Live talking more and breaking down the announcements. You're about to go to the main stage and hear from Ridwan Kamil, governor of West Java, Indonesia. An announcement we'll see.